Peace and love, everyone. My name is DayatraAmber. I am a mental health professional. I run a private practice. I call it healing and holistic health. Beyond just the mental health, I like to address the spiritual and as well as physical health as well, a holistic form of healing. We can't address one without the other. So I do a series of videos on my social media platforms. And last week we had a great discussion about depression and the impacts and how it looks in real life. And now we want to have a conversation about anxiety, what that looks like in real life and how it impacts our community. So anxiety is based in fear, right? So we naturally feel fear. Fear is an indication that our body communicates to us when we are experiencing something that may potentially be dangerous. A lot of times we can feel fear without even knowing what we're afraid of, right? So it's a certain feeling. It's, I'm afraid this will happen. I'm afraid something already happened. I'm afraid something is going to happen in the future. So it's always, anxiety is always based in fear and not quite being present in the moment, but either thinking about the past or the future.
So what are, a little fear is one thing, but can we go a little bit deeper? What does anxiety do in the immediate time? What happens to your mind, your body, your thoughts?
So a lot of times we associate anxiety with our fight or flight response. That's our natural response to a dangerous situation. It could be traumatic, but just anything dangerous. Our body naturally increases cortisol and adrenaline so that we are able to either run for our lives or fight for our lives. And you could also throw freeze in there too, because sometimes we can just sort of freeze when we're like overwhelmed with those hormones and not really knowing what to do. So my goal is to help as many people as possible try to regulate their anxiety. It doesn't become a problem until you feel anxiety for situations that don't necessarily warrant that anxiety. Right? So there's a fear that you may naturally feel. It's in the pit of your stomach. Maybe you're approaching a car accident or you see a fight in the street and you naturally get nervous, right? We get ready to run or we get ready to fight. But when we experience those feelings and there's nothing happening, when we feel like death is upon us and we're just on our way to work, that's when we really need to sit with ourselves and get to the bottom of that fear. And we may need some help in processing what we're afraid of. So I think what often happens is that we live a lifestyle of fear. So specifically, I always like to talk about Black people because that's my focus. For Black people, the history of our experience in this country, we have generational fear, cortisol, adrenaline in our blood, in our DNA, right? So we're born with that depending on where we live. Are we secure? Do we have is our housing secure? Do we have food to eat? Do we have clothing? Those basic necessities.
What do you think happens also when we watch George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, all these young people in the community who see, feel, and know it happening daily, no matter how many adults and other people might want to ignore it or other cultures, it doesn't affect them the same way. But as a people, we see, hear, and feel, whether it's here in Buffalo, whether it's in Birmingham, we feel each other's energy, we feel each other's pain, we feel what mothers go through. So what is happening to us as a people, as a movement, as these triggers pop up and they remain in our minds as we're driving through streets and going to stores?
So this is the reason. Thank you for lifting that up, Jomo, because we walk around with a lot of extra cortisol in our bodies, and the effects of that extra stress on our mind, body, and spirit is the reason why we're more susceptible to most infectious diseases right now. Even anxiety and depression are most common in Black women between 40 and 60 years of age.
I'm happy that this Kwanzaa is going to be focusing on black women and returning the honor and actually getting a chance to listen to a woman's story. I don't know if we were able to make that connection, but I want to make sure that we talk about that and issues that are happening with our women from a woman's perspective. The last question I want to ask you is, we talked about how you feel in the moment. Over a long term, with all of this anxiety, this cortisol, all this stuff in your system, does it affect your rest? Does it affect your irritability? Now, if you've been stressed out all day, you're probably not going to be sleeping well at night.
Right, so that's exactly how it shows up. It shows up as a person who doesn't get enough sleep. And everything sort of affects everything else, right? So all of these symptoms, a person who probably is not eating right, a person who is probably working too much or too little, right? So we have a lot of issues that are layered on top of that, which is the reason why we suffer as a group. And so not for it to be all, bad, there are ways that we can handle this, right? There are ways that we can, let's put it this way, be our best selves, even in this storm of negativity and stress. And just, sometimes, we could walk right outside and just see the dilapidation and see a lot of the negative. But we must know, first and foremost, we are a resilient people. And there are things that we can do in our daily lives that can make us more resilient in these situations. Like, for example, you mentioned like the George Floyd story and many, too many other stories about death and suffering that we experience. So we need to take time for ourselves, taking that time for ourselves to meditate, the whole thing, the eating right, the balance, finding that balance. And there's tons of ways. I know we gotta...
Listen, we're going to come forward after the break, but this whole thing about recognizing anxiety, what it does to our short-term health, what it does to our long-term health, how this actually even has an effect upon our immune system. The main key that we're focusing is right now, me, Ross Jum, I'm telling everyone, for you Christians, you Israelites, you Kemetic practitioners, as we go into the season of winter and the sun is getting less and less in our daily reality, as the cold weather is increasing, all of these things that are happening around us is going on in real time. I'm going to ask everybody to double and triple up on your prayers, your meditation, burn your candles, calm your spirit, and prepare yourselves so that you can rest. We must not let Babylon, the state of confusion, get us down. We are here to control the narrative, and one of the most important narratives that we need to control is how we govern our lives in our bodies, which is the temple, which is where the Almighty Creator lives.